Hey, everybody, it's Thursday night. Thank you for tuning in to Night Terrors Radio. Got a great show lineup for you. We're going to be talking about remote viewing tonight, among other things. I am joined by Rob Pastilli, our ever vigilant host on the East Coast. And I don't know, are you going by your real name tonight, Stephen, or a moniker?
Whichever.
It's okay. Can we do
Let's
a
just
different moniker every time?
Every single
let's
time. Yeah.
Every
let's just
single
call
time?
him Mr. Moniker. Can we just call him
Mr.
Mr.
Moniker.
Moniker?
That's good for me.
Okay. Mr. Moniker
Mr.
tonight?
Moniker, yes.
We are joined by Mr. Moniker tonight as well. I was going to call him Studley Buttons because it sounds.
We'll do that
vaguely,
next time. Next time will be Studley Buttons.
It sounds vaguely British. Like that to me is a British porn name. Right?
I don't even know if I can do a British accent. I'll try though.
Like Studley Buttons.
Yeah. Studley Buttons.
Studley Buttons. That's your British porn name.
Yeah, that's it.
Studley Buttons. For those of you who are watching, you missed quite frankly the most ultimate bit ever in podcasting, where we came up with Nicolas Cage's new film.
Yes.
And it is a timely tale. It's very reverent. A timely tale of Nicolas Cage waking up in the lobby of a very expensive hotel in Vegas, and he wakes up to a drug lord or some other person wanting a whole bunch of money from him that he doesn't have. So in a fit of panic, he grabs a small child and gives it to the drug lord as payment. And to avoid going to prison, the FBI's human trafficking unit sends him into the lion's den to not only gather information, but to get the child back.
It sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Again, I think if we wrote this up on like a legal pad and sent it to him, I think it would be less than 30 seconds before we got the call back.
I don't even think he would. I think he would fax it back. He would with a yes, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
Like, how do you write "I'll do it" in Nicolas Cage? I mean, how do you spell that? Is it like "do it" one word? Is it like
I don't even think it'd be in English. It'd be like in cuneiform. Like I think he'd manage that it would just look like it. You'd look at it and you'd know instantly. You know, like whatever kind of bugs they like put in your ear in Star Trek to, to let you hear everybody else's voice or whatever.
The translator bugs.
Yeah,
Is that what that is?
It would be like instantly you'd just know.
Yeah,
yeah. And then it would be even weirder because you'd find out after that just how many people are speaking Cajun across the globe.
Oh, that's a good one. Cajun.
Yeah, that you never knew of.
Why do I feel
you never knew until you had the bug?
Why do I feel like he's fluent in hieroglyph? I just have this weird feeling that like he has a typewriter that is hieroglyph.
That's his written language.
Yeah, that he can just bang out like.
Like I have a feeling that you could walk into any number of furniture stores with Mr. Cage, and you could remark on how great this couch is, and then he would ask you if you knew the length in Egyptian cubits, and when you didn't, he would take out a cubit ruler and show you
a cubit measure, yeah, and then just.
I think I'm going to buy this sectional. This is great. Like, how big is your living room? I don't know. It's probably, was it 30 feet or something? He's like, in cubits. Oh, shit. And then he just pulls out we had 6 viewers and we're down to 0. In this
that did it.
Of this conversation. Like I just watched it. It was like I thought it was counting down to something. Like something great is going to happen when it reaches 0. No, we just don't have any viewers.
No.
That was quick. That was really quick.
It's Cajun.
Yeah, like they didn't stick around at all.
It's Cajun.
Once we started talking about chaos at Ashley Furniture, everyone fucking bailed. They just left.
Yeah, we got one back.
We got one back. We better start talking about remote viewing, or we're going to lose
Okay.
this one.
Well, I think we need to jump into Florida Man because it would be us without Florida Man.
Okay, let's do the news. How can people leave before they see the top-notch production value of this
I know.
podcast?
It's not fair. It truly is not fair.
It's not. It's not at all. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, nope, they're gone. They're gone. They just stuck around for the news intro, and now they're gone.
We told them it wasn't fair, and they were like, "Fuck you guys."
They're like, life isn't fair.
I don't know how you leave for Florida, man. That's
No.
bad.
I don't even know what button I pushed when I said it isn't fair. Like, I don't have a, like, it would be like a mouse or something on your phone, but I did this. Like, that's how people leave our show.
Yeah.
Because I guess they're just like
I feel like
putting their finger up their ass.
I feel like as people leave, we should have like a classic telephone, like that classic telephone hang up.
No, we need a bit. Like, when every person leaves, we need to like cut quick, like a baby crying. Like, this is how it makes us
That
feel.
would be great.
This is how it makes you feel when you leave our show, and then
Right.
it's just a baby crying, and maybe an old man dying. Yeah, or like an old man dying or something.
What's
they're both
what's an
sort
old
of-
man dying sound like?
It's just a death rattle. It's
Just the death
one
rattle?
last gasp, and that's it.
All
He's
right.
gone. Okay, so we have the news
That took
for
a
you
weird
tonight.
turn.
And we
That took
have,
a
it
really
did. It
weird-
went dark quickly.
Yeah, it did.
Like it went from something as simple as a baby dying to just someone's last moments.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about Florida Man. We lost them too.
Well-
They're gone now.
Okay. For those of you that tune back in or watch this later, in Lake County, Florida, Richard Atchison, 52-year-old Richard Atchison, he was arrested because his wife asked him to help make dinner, and he beat her with the Christmas tree.
Does it give details on just how he did it?
It says that officers said the incident happened in their home in Fruitland Park, because it's Florida, so of course it was Fruitland Park.
Yeah.
According to the affidavit, they had gotten to an argument after the woman asked for help making dinner. At some point, the woman reportedly put a spoon in the sink, accidentally splashing Mr. Atchison, and he then he lost his temper, began to pack all of his belongings in the car, and when she
I like how they had to tell us that he lost his temper. Like, we couldn't just,
He beat her with a Christmas
Yeah,
tree. I mean,
but yeah,
I think it's a
like,
given.
just stone cold.
he then left the house, went drinking, came back, and when the wife tried to leave because he was becoming belligerent, he shoved her, picked up the Christmas tree in the corner of the room, and threw it at her, striking her and apparently causing injuries that needed stitches.
I mean,
So-
did he like pluck it up like a lush green Excalibur?
I
Just like both hands.
I
then-
kind of
then
envision it
crack.
more like 80s professional wrestling, where he kind of like, did the gorilla press with it and just, across the room.
He just launched it at her.
So,
What do you think her face looked like moments before it hit? I
Yeah.
think Mr. Moniker has.
well, I think
Something
it was
like that. I don't know.
I think it was
Yeah.
red and blue and green and just illuminated.
From the lights of the tree. It looked like a fucking crime scene.
Right?
It was
didn't
like
say that.
It was like
Nowhere
a police
does it
siren.
say he unplugged it. And nowhere does it say that he removed any of the ornaments. It says that
Oh no.
he threw it at her. So I'm assuming it was still plugged in.
Yeah, I don't
on
think
it.
this was premeditated.
In my mind, it's still plugged in.
I
Yeah,
think this was
definitely.
in a fit of rage.
Like the apartment is still taped off.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like the tree has got like a little tape outline around it. It's still flashing.
Right, yeah. Elf on the shelf, just face down on the floor, little chalk outline.
But I just love the fact that no matter what, if Florida Man, Christmas tree, stitches, boom, there's your story.
And it happens so quickly.
It goes back to
Blink of
that.
an eye.
I
In
mean,
the
all right,
blink of an eye, we've got our Florida Man story.
here we go. We're going to do it again tonight. All right. Mr. Moniker, I'm going to start with Florida Man. And Mr. Moniker, you give me another word. Florida Man.
Just pluck a word from the heavens.
Yep.
Dick.
Oh, wow. That's going to be a lot.
Ash, if you would please give me another word or item, if you choose.
Drive through.
Okay. I think we made this one a little too easy for Florida Man.
Like we didn't use turnip.
Right. Florida man accused of driving around naked with electronic. There you go. Here it is. A Florida man was accused of driving around naked with an electronic device attached to his penis. A man was arrested Monday after police say he was caught driving around naked with an electronic device attached to his penis. Boynton Beach police responded to Orange Drive, where an alarmed resident reported being propositioned by the naked man who was slowly driving through the neighborhood. Of the suspect, later identified as 56-year-old Kurt Allen Jenkins. Of course it was.
Of course, yeah. They got to give all three of his names.
Yeah.
Because that's
Why wouldn't they?
That's what he answers to.
Reportedly
first,
drove
middle,
by
and
the
last.
victim and gestured for the victim to look at his groin. The victim noticed an electronic device with wires attached to Jenkins' penis and called police.
I love how they're being very vague. Electronic device.
Right.
I want it to be something that has no value in the new world. Like it was a 1 gigabyte MP3 player.
It was
he just had the just wrapped around him. Yeah.
it was a set of headphones with the old curly telephone cord and a 1/4-inch jack.
That's what
There you go.
I've got that. That's what I've got. Look.
Did
Guess
you take that off of a
what I'm
Florida
doing
man's
after we get off of
penis?
here.
Were you in the...
Just for a couple days.
Okay.
I was just driving around.
Sounds right.
Like I said, I think we
I
made
was just
that one a
driving
little
around,
too easy.
listening to my 1 gigabyte back catalog of Nelly. That's
Rico Suave.
just
All
stopping
right.
people at stoplights and just giving them a quick motion and then rolling my window down. I'm like, hey, you want to see my shuffle?
Want to see my electronic device?
Would you like to see my electronic device? And they were so overcome with curiosity that they didn't run away at that moment. No,
That
No,
they
they
actually
looked in.
looked.
they did.
Okay.
Yeah, they looked in. And I'm pale enough that I didn't have to turn the dope scope on. Pitch black, and they could see it.
Well, because the iPod
of
Shuffle lit up. Remember, they had the ones that had the little screen that would, like, if you got really.
Yeah.
I didn't have the light up shuffle. I had the other one. Sad.
Like the little square one.
Yeah. Just
Oh.
nothing to it. No lights.
The great thing about
I had the
having,
long rectangle one. That's the one I had.
like if you lifted up your junk and you put the light up shuffle under it, and it looked like two jack-o'-lanterns kissing.
Wait.
It was great.
Ash Hamilton.
We've got one
Kurt.
person barely hanging on, just barely hanging on.
Well, they're really interested
True.
in what we were doing.
Horrible Halloween themed scrotal jokes.
Right.
Well, it wasn't my fault that you guys came up with Dick and Drive Through after Florida Man.
Well,
I was going-
I had to assume that Richard went by Dick.
Oh, okay.
That's where I couldn't help
okay.
myself. I mean,
Gotcha.
Okay, so
Because
we were just
last
going,
time
it just
was-
kept going over and over
just
my head.
classically named Florida people.
Right.
last time it
Okay.
was Florida Man, colostomy bag, and bar.
Yeah. And
And-
there was an instant hit.
And Florida Man got thrown out of a bar for swinging his colostomy bag at other patrons.
Can we at least for the sake of this podcast, can we just elaborate that he was actually screaming, "Are you not entertained?" while he did it? That's the Gladiator movie. That's not the Gladiator movie we wanted, but it is the Gladiator movie we deserved.
Yes. Yeah. I think we
Did he-
needed it.
Was it Are You Not Entertained, shitheads? Was that like
There was a brief pause
That would make sense.
right?
when no one answered because they thought it was a rhetorical question, and then he got even madder.
At which point Nicolas Cage signed on immediately for that movie.
Right,
And I would
And
like
3
to play
sequels.
right, and proceed to give that man one American child.
I'll play the colostomy bag.
I'll do it. Okay, so we are going to get to remote viewing. It's
viewing.
going to happen.
We are.
It is going to happen.
We are.
It's
gonna
almost
get
like
there.
I can see it.
Oh,
That was
right,
done.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like somewhere
Okay.
there's another version of us that's really wanting to talk about remote viewing.
Right. Right.
That already has. They've already talked about it, and then came back in time
Right.
so that they could hear themselves talk about it while we're doing
And,
this.
and they said, "Don't worry, you've only got one viewer anyways. It doesn't matter. Talk about the first thing that pops in your head. How about putting how about putting a shuffle, a light up shuffle under your nuts? That's where you go with that one. Yeah.
I think it was a Zune. Remember the Zune?
I think that's what happened in most Zunes.
Yes.
'Cause, I mean, like, they were around for they came out on March 1st, and by April 3rd, no one.
Yeah. Nobody cared. Nobody cared about them. There was one kid who just made that fateful decision when he was put on the spot. Well, what do you want? You want the shuffle or the Zune? And he just liked the way it sounded.
He froze.
Yeah.
Froze.
And then lost all of his friends.
And he
following
showed up at a
days.
party with a 6-pack of Zima and his Zune. And he was like, check it out. Zima and a Zune. And
Right. Because they were like, who's bringing the tunes?
right.
And they were like, Chad. Chad's going to do it. Chad comes in. But guess what? They've only got that really big docking station.
That is
For an
definitely something
iPod.
Chad would do.
And they're like, Chad's here with the tunes. And everybody gets really excited. And then he brings out that fucking Zune. And it can't dock. It can't dock on the iPod dock. So Chad just basically ruined the party. Chad ruined the party with his Zune.
He tried
That's
to
why
save it.
Zunes were not popular at all.
He tried to save it with the Zima, but it just didn't work.
No, because as soon as he brought the Zima out, that guy from To Catch a Predator came right around the corner and introduced himself. It like Zima for like pedophiles was like the fucking bat signal. It's like all you have to do is flash it, and they just all come. Well, it was like every time that. And what was the guy's name from To Catch a Predator?
Chris
something,
Hansen.
right?
Chris
Oh,
Hansen.
Chris
yeah,
Hansen, right?
Remember the
How
Jay
about you
Moore
have a
bit?
seat?
And he was like,
Yeah.
Jay Moore bit. The 2 words that he can't say is sex and seat. And they get Chris Hansen. Why don't you come in and have a sheet?
Yeah. And I have to think that they only rented like the one like mock house, right? So I have this feeling like there was a mock house right around the corner was a packaged liquor, right? And the guy by this time was like wise to it, that like, all these guys were coming in and getting Zima from his packaged liquor, and they were all getting arrested after the To Catch a Predator. So, this guy sitting here behind the counter, and guy came in, he's like, yeah, I noticed you guys were out of, no, we've got it behind the counter. What flavor?
It was the same 6-pack. They just
It was,
right
they just
after
recycled it. Chris
Right.
Hansen would drop it off on the way home.
they had a showrunner that would just take the 6-pack and run it back over.
It's like, right. Stacy, could you take this back to the Packies? Thank you.
Ooh, did we really just say Packies?
Well, isn't that like the Bostonian way of saying package liquor?
No,
I thought so. I thought it's like the
No.
Packies, right?
no.
Or did I just do something really
Yeah,
bad?
You just culturally
Inadvertently.
appropriated. Yeah, you just.
Okay,
I think so.
hold on though. I'm gonna. What do they call? I cannot type. What do they call package liquors
In Boston.
Boston? Boston.
They
No,
do.
Packies.
It's called Packy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Learn something new every day.
yeah.
There you go.
Packy is a package store. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll go with it.
Because
All
they're
right,
like
let's-
Wicked Fa.
Wicked
They're like
Fa.
Wicked Fa from my house.
My daughter at one point in time, I don't know how the hell she did it, but she put a guy with a Boston accent on my map app on my phone.
Oh God!
So it would be like, all right, you're gonna go up here to the light and take a right, and then you're gonna go Wicked Fa.
Right. There's gonna be a Packy. There's gonna be a Packy like right up on the left.
All right, let's talk remote viewing.
Remote
do we
viewing.
do we have our one viewer still with us?
We've got two.
We've got
so-
two that are struggling on. They're
Okay.
barely hanging on.
Well, maybe it's increasing because we're talking about something other than remote viewing.
Right, and that I am on the precipice of accidentally saying a horrible racial slur. Yeah,
That might have been my fault.
that would be.
I might have read into that because in Western New York, that word is a whole different thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's
So-
a different. It refers to fine people that may own a corner store,
Or a package liquor store.
or maybe.
So we're going to talk about remote viewing. What is everyone's thoughts on remote viewing? By the way, because remember at one point in time in the Victorian era, there was a lot of talk about bilocation. That was a big thing.
Yeah. I think if you don't mind, I'm excited about this topic.
Mhm.
And I think you jump into it with like MK Ultra, right? Because when you go, I mean, the United States government spent, the equivalent of probably what would be $100 million in today money on trying to develop this talent through, drugs or whatever, negative reinforcement, all these other options. And I think, you get into this whole thing of there had to be some kind of jump off point for them to say, hey, we need to invest this kind of money in this project. I don't think it was just as simple as, hey, what do you want to spend $100 million on? I don't know. How about people that can see into the future? I think it goes back to what you were saying, in the Victorian area where there were people that supposedly could do this.
Yeah. And there were reports of these people being seen in more than one place at one time, which is a little bit different from what our definition of remote viewing is now, where, it's just someone who was present sort of in the room, could look around, could tell you things, but no one could really see their astral form. But in the Victorian era, people were claiming to actually see them. Like they would see them, like at a restaurant, they would actually see that person there, at a library, etc. So this idea of bilocation was real popular then.
Wasn't there different forms of remote viewing too? Isn't like one of them, or different manifestations where like one of them is the remote drawing where they draw the pictures and that's how they do it as well?
Yes.
Seems like that was something.
Yes, that was part of the MK Ultra experiment.
Right. Okay.
Was they were trying to get people to not only describe a room that they were not in, but able to put pencil to paper and draw said room.
Correct, yeah.
Location of chairs and different things in the room. And, and it's interesting too, that you brought up, Ash, the people being in two places at once, because one of the things that I read this book once, and I can't remember the Edgar Allan Poe story now, but there was like William Williams or something like that, where he was two different people, but he was the same person, and people kept saying, "Hey, I just saw you around the corner or whatever," and then when they met each other, they dueled and killed himself. It was I can't remember the name of the story, but anyway, there was this one story that came out of Russia during the Victorian era that a classroom of students, I believe it was 19 students, were in a classroom and their teacher was writing something on the blackboard. And at the time she was writing on the blackboard, she came in out of the hallway, stood next to herself, and started writing on the blackboard again. And she was like physically two separate people. And like all these, and I guess I want to say it was, high school age, 15, 16-year-old children at the time. I don't know, they didn't have, it wasn't called high school, but whatever it was. But these were 15 or 16-year-old children, advanced studies that witnessed their teacher in the same exact clothing, the same exact hairstyle, the same exact everything, walk into the room, stand next to herself, and begin writing on the blackboard. And it was documented, over and over again. And I wish I could remember the name of the book that it was in. But it was so strange to me because, again, that's part of that remote viewing of the time, that doppelganger or split person,
Right,
people
yeah.
were seeing. To me, it's fascinating, that this has been going on for ages. You have stories of people, even on Christopher Columbus's ships. There were stories where Columbus himself wrote down things that took place, 2 and 3 days later.
Right, yeah.
That's what fascinates me about this room, the remote viewing topic, is that it crosses hundreds of years.
Now, this is interesting when we start talking about, people being in multiple places at one time, because there's a story that I had read about, and it was probably just on like a paranormal forum not too long ago, about a man and a woman where he was on his way to work, and something happened. There was some kind of a wreck or something, and he was held up to the point where it was going to take so long to get in, like both the ways, like into the place of business, were basically just bottlenecked. It was going to take so long for him to get in that he actually decided to take the night off. But what was crazy is that when he was in his car getting ready to, make the decision of whether or not he was going to turn around or go into work, he was basically just stuck in traffic. Someone called his wife claiming to be him in exactly his same voice, telling her about the wreck. He gets home and says, you'd never believe what's happened, but I'm obviously not going in because there's so much traffic congestion around my work. And she's like, I know, because you called me. And he swears he did not call her.
That's crazy.
And it was even something like it got even more bizarre, because I want to say that it was from his phone number, but that he didn't even have his phone on him at the time.
I just found the story. The Edgar Allan Poe story was William Wilson. If anybody wants to read it,
Okay.
William Wilson. It's a person that, again, kind of like meets himself. But anyway, so do you remember where that took place? Because I want to look that one up, because that's one.
I'm not for sure, but and I can't remember. It was I have seen it now in multiple places, and on a lot of like top 10 weirdest stories, things like that, since I had originally read it in the forum. So it's been picked up by different websites and different news agencies and sort of retold. but I'm sure if you just Googled like the general concept,
Right.
Man calls, I don't know, man calls wife, or man's doppelganger calls wife.
Mm.
That would
Okay.
probably be like the more appropriate way to search for it. And there were
Okay.
a couple of them that were similar.
So I just looked, I just out of curiosity, I typed in, famous doppelgangers, and it came up with one of the things it came up with was the difference between biolocation versus doppelganger. And bilocation is the psychic ability to project an image of oneself in a second location, whereas remote viewing is actually viewing the second location. So, but it goes back to that, there's so many of those tales, the tales of the husband calling the wife after the husband's already dead, kind of thing, or
Yeah.
like the accident,
Sure.
like you just mentioned, and all these different things, and I just thought it was a fascinating topic that I thought we should take kind of a little bit of a dive into.
Now, since we can talk about anything. This is our show. Now let me ask this question to both Rob and Mr. Moniker tonight. Has there ever been a case of mistaken identity in your lives where someone swore you were somewhere else? Swore you were someone else?
Yes.
Have you ever had that?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about it, Rob.
I was at work. This was many years ago. I was working at Home Depot, and this guy absolutely swore up and down that I went to high school with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's like, dude, you don't remember? I'm like, I didn't grow up here. He goes, yeah, I know. It was in Spencerport, which is like a half an hour away from Rochester. I'm like, no. I went to high school in New Jersey, and this guy was adamant that nope, I went to high school with him, that we were friends, and we graduated together. He said, yeah, like 1985, man, class of 85. I'm like, no, I graduated in 84 in Madison.
And that's even weird, though. That's even weird that
Still
window.
a close coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah, that the window is so short.
And I remember coming home and, telling, people about it, and they were like, yeah, he was drunk, whatever. I'm like, he was serious. He was,
oh yeah.
This was not like someone that was off their rocker. Like, he's trying to tell me about, remember that party that we went to? Come on, man. Like, dude, no, I don't, because I did not go to high school in Spencerport, New York. I went to high school in Madison, New Jersey.
So I don't know if either you were ever lucky enough to have in your town, or at least close to you, a Wiener Schnitzel restaurant.
We had it
before. I don't remember where.
We had a German house. Yeah.
Okay.
And the German house was spelled Haus because it has to be.
Right. So Wiener Schnitzel is basically what you think. It's a hot dogs. It's all hot dogs, and all done different ways. And I gotta tell you, I loved Wiener Schnitzel. I loved that restaurant because, quite simply,
was it in New Jersey near Willowbrook?
This was actually in Danville, Illinois.
Okay.
Close to where I grew up.
Because I know you used to work at Willowbrook, right? Or near Willowbrook Mall?
I worked in Willowbrook when I was a floating manager for Borders.
Okay. The German house was on 46th, right near Willowbrook.
Okay. I gotcha. Yeah, which I wonder how well that mall has fared. I mean, it has been, because most of them are, like practically abandoned across the country at this point. But I have to think that the malls in Jersey did better.
Oh.
Because it seemed like they were just tailor-made for New Jersey.
Yeah. The elevators were a little higher to fit the hair.
I would just have to think that Willowbrook is still, just packing them in. Because it was a pretty busy mall at one point in time. Of course, now we're talking like, years and years ago. But so the Wiener Schnitzel restaurant, I'm sort of the opinion that like, don't dress up my trash. Like, if
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat crap, look at me and go, "What would you like on your crap?"
Garbage
And
plate, brother.
that's right. And that's sort of the approach Wiener Schnitzel has. It's like,
Yeah.
listen, you're getting a hot dog. You're getting a goddamn hot dog. What would you like on it? Because we'll put anything on that shit. We'll put anything on that hot dog. So you go in knowing that you're already at the bottom of the food totem, right?
Oh, you're going sauerkraut, relish, mustard, chopped onion, boom.
Oh,
If
they
it's
did
behind the counter, I want it on there.
one of my favorites was actually their cheese dog, or their version of the cheese dog was, the cheese sauce, diced onions, and mustard. And damn, was it good. I mean, it was a damn good cheese dog. And then they had, like what they call the Chicago dog, which is always being contested throughout the greater Midwest
Right.
of what actually goes on
A Chicago dog.
a Chicago dog. But then they had
Meth.
like
Meth.
that's exactly what it is. It's just sprinkled on there. It's just
I'll gross everybody out and take it a step further. So what I like on my hot dog is
Uh-huh.
peanut butter.
no
I
shit.
eat peanut butter dogs, and they are amazing. I don't care what anybody says; they're awesome. Everyone should try one.
I'm not saying I wouldn't like it. I'm just saying my brain's never went there.
Yeah, mine
My
has.
brain has never made that connection.
Yeah.
It never has. I don't think
Yeah.
it probably ever would have.
Peanut butter dog. It's the way to go.
A peanut butter. So what exactly is the taste explosion then?
It's
of the-
amazing.
And what would you liken it to?
There's nothing like it.
There's nothing quite like it. It's just a flat out, I'm not even going to play your game.
No.
There's nothing like the
It's just
peanut butter dog.
Yeah, I was
Nothing
going to play
like
your
it.
game, but then I just said, you know what? Fuck you. I'm making my own rules to your game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't care what you try to get me to do. There's nothing like it. But I'm definitely curious now about the peanut butter dog. I don't know.
going to go microwave a hot dog.
Oh, I'm not that curious.
Okay.
I am. I think I will. Yeah.
I just
Well-
remember your face when they got you here to Rochester. I'm like, we're going to have garbage plates. And you went, what?
Excuse me.
What is a garbage
Is
plate?
that a strip
I've never
club?
heard of that before.
Oh, Ash will tell you a garbage plate is it's about a 120
delicious.
mile an hour bullet train through your intestines.
It's delicious. Yeah.
It sounds fun.
But at 2 a.m. after you've had a garbage plate, you wake up and you realize that the bathroom is not nearly close enough.
No. No. You wake up and you're literally in a fight for your life with your own colon.
It's basically it started as, we need to get back to your remote viewing story, but real quick, it started as a 2 a.m.
We've only got 50 minutes left anyways. We're fine.
How many viewers do we have left?
Whew.
One's hanging on.
We've got
There you go.
one remote viewer. It's not even them.
It's just a
They
remote
probably
viewer.
just left their computer on.
It's their astral projection.
Yeah.
It's Nicolas Cage trying to find out how to sign on to the movie that we talked about in the beginning.
Well, somebody told him that somebody found out about that whole baby deal with the South African jug peddler.
the garbage plate it's either 2 hot dogs, 2 cheeseburgers, a hot dog and a cheeseburger, over the top of home fries or French fries with macaroni salad, and then it's covered in a meat hot sauce.
No, wait, Rob, I gotta have to stop you there because a lot of the viewing audience, okay, the person that is currently stepped away from their computer, may not know what hot sauce is because I did not know either. It's not what you would think.
Not hot sauce. Hot.
No.
sauce.
It's like ground up meat. It's a meat hot sauce, and it's like ground up meat and a bunch of other spices, and it's like simmered for like days to get a really good hot sauce. You want it like cooked down for days. And then it's got like a little bit of a spice to it, but it's got like some other flavors in it. and then they just put like
It's
2 ladles.
savory.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
You made garbage plates at your house.
Yeah.
I remember
yeah.
Chanel telling me.
Yep. Chanel made some garbage plates. She came as close as she could.
And then they put 2 ladles of this sauce on top of it with some onions and some mustard.
Garbage
And you
plate.
just eat it all like, you know, you don't differentiate. You don't eat your French fries one at a time. No, you just dice that shit up and shovel it into your head.
Yeah. That's all you do.
And it's good
And
for
it's-
you.
I
Your
think the only thing it needs
glorious.
is peanut butter. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's
Well, I think
probably
we're gonna
just
have-
needs
If we
peanut
could
butter.
add one ingredient, it would be peanut butter.
Crunchy or smooth?
Smooth.
Okay.
Who
Yeah.
needs nuts in
What do you
their
think? I
food?
am a monster?
I mean,
I had to
that would
ask.
just be absurd.
Yeah.
Right.
That's outside the realm of possibility.
What the hell's wrong with you, Crunchy?
Okay, so
Remote viewing.
I was at a Wiener Schnitzel, right? And I believe I was probably having a few cheese dogs because, you know, good stuff. And as I'm like there, one of the managers comes out. I mean, I was young, probably 19. One of the managers comes out and says, "You over here." And I was like, my first porno. This is how it starts. Just like the ones that I've watched. And that did not happen at all. She actually takes me back to her office, right? And this is not a porno. She takes me back to her office and she's like, "How in the hell do you think you can call in to work today and show up to eat here?" And I was like, "What in the world are you talking about?" She's like, "You were on the schedule today. Are you trying to get fired?" And I'm like, "I'll go one better. I don't even work here." And she was like, "What in the world are you talking about?" I'm like, "I don't work here."
You can't quit. I'm firing you.
Right. Like, I don't work here.
Well,
And,
not anymore.
and it like 4 or 5 times, it probably was more my voice than
Mhm.
anything, but like 4 or 5 times of me just looking at her going, "Lady, I don't work here." All of a sudden you saw her expression totally change. And she was like, "Oh shit." Like, I'm just berating a stranger. And she was like, "I am so sorry." And I'm like, "I'm sorry I didn't show up for work today." And
That's
she
amazing.
was like, "No, you look exactly like our employee." And even as I was walking out, like, she actually turned to someone else who was getting ready to talk to me, and she was like, "It's not him. It's not him." But it was that. Like,
I was just about to say, like, did the other people in the restaurant, were they like, you know, Tony, look at Tony coming in here eating after he doesn't show up to
Yeah.
work, kind of thing?
like, look at this fuckhead.
Yeah.
Look at this guy. Yeah, I mean, it was so weird because I mean, I've had, like, you know, where the person starts talking to you and then very quickly realizes it's not you, either by your expression or just, you know, whatever you're doing. Like, they get a really good look and they're like, "Oh, that's not the guy." But the fact that it was like, it was taking a while, and I think it was more my voice that really, you know, dispelled the illusion or whatever. You know, as soon as I started talking, my mannerisms or whatever were different, and then it finally sort of, you know, hit her. No, this is definitely not the guy.
That's crazy.
Someone that she obviously works with,
Right.
you know. So
I
she's
still think that guy that I met at Home Depot, you know, to this day, 20 years later, still going, "The fucking asshole." He was like my best friend in high school, and I run into him. He's like, "I don't know you." You know, like,
oh yeah,
I mean, this guy was that, you know, it like your story, like, it ended with her realizing you weren't the guy. This guy
Yeah.
went home thinking that,
he still thinks it. Yeah,
yeah.
But-
It was
and
so
I-
weird.
and I know that, like, you know, there is a science behind, like, there's only so many ways you can rearrange Mr. Potato Head. You know, like, as humans, there's only so many parts.
Right.
You know, I mean, for the most part, it's like you're gonna look like somebody else. because the style of your eyes, like like of course I got a big nose, so it's like there are other big nose people out there, or like somebody's gonna say, oh, you got those bird lips. So there are those sets of features that sometimes all sort of come together on one person, and it's like, oh well, those are the same features this person has. It is kind of, it's just like it's potluck DNA. After a while, somebody's going to bring the same dish. It's just the way it is.
Right.
um but it's now what I find also fascinating. This, of course, isn't really remote viewing, but this is still talking about this idea of people sort of looking alike, or people being mistaken, or the bilocation. Have you ever met anyone that has literally dated or married like an identical clone of the person that they were with before?
I don't think I have.
I know. I gotta. I don't know. I mean, I know a couple of people that, like, not necessarily identical clone, but married a person that was like into the same things, like the
Right.
same kind of stuff, but not looks wise.
Yeah, I think I'm talking like, in appearance, like almost
Okay.
identical.
Yeah, I don't have that one in my wheelhouse.
I did when I was in high school. Like the first, sort of real semi-adult relationship that I had,
Hmm.
and this girl was my girlfriend for, I think, almost a full year in high school. When we broke up, I was at a party, and I think it was like around the holidays, and we're having like a couple weeks off, so it would have been like during my Christmas break, and I think I was a senior. I was a senior in high school at the time, so I was already like 18,
Right.
and just running around like an adult, like an 18-year-old. And I was at a friend of mine's party, a friend of mine who was older and had graduated, so there were other like more adults in their early 20s and stuff there. So it was real easy to get alcohol, and I was having a few drinks, and a girl came in, and as soon as she came in, I went, holy shit, the one place I'm at, and my ex comes in. And I didn't even know that my ex was friends with the girl that, had the party or anything like that. But I just instantly was like, God, you got to be kidding me. Like, because it wasn't a horrible breakup, but being the first girl that I sort of had real adult feelings for, not just the typical holding hands, but the whole thinking your love. And maybe I was at the time, who knows? I mean, I was so young, but it was my first real feelings of, I don't want to be away from this person. Does that make sense?
Right.
Mhm.
Like, other relationships are always like, oh, this is what we're supposed to do. Supposed to hold hands, supposed to, kiss each other on the cheek. But I think this was the first time that I felt real longing, for someone. Like, I didn't like being apart from her. I genuinely enjoy spending time with her. I had thoughts of, being with her for forever. So even though it wasn't a very like bitter breakup, it really wasn't. I still, like, I was pretty devastated, actually. And with the thought of like being at this party and having like the one person came in that just like broke my heart. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And it wasn't her. It was another girl that lived like around the block from this apartment that my friend had rented. And what was really strange is this girl comes in. I'm like on the floor. Like, there weren't a lot of, it's a 20 something's apartment. I'm surprised there
Yeah.
was a couch in there, but there's a couch and a couple chairs, and everybody else is either, on the floor, popping a squat or wherever. And I was sort of with my back against the wall on the floor, sitting there drinking a beer. And this girl comes up, and the girl who I thought was my ex-girlfriend, grabs a beer and comes up and sits right down beside me and starts talking. And there wasn't any real prompt. It wasn't like she was looking around for a space and there wasn't a space there. She just took a beer, came down, started talking to me. And I ended up dating her. Took her to my high school prom, and and she fucked me over hugely. She was a horrible person. She was a really horrible person.
Worse than
Um,
the first one.
the first one actually like wasn't a real horrible person. She was older than I was, and it was just the timing was bad.
Was this
It
just
was
like a Pet Cemetery thing? Somebody buried her, she came back.
right, yeah,
Yeah, some people called it puppy love. The doctor called it an unhealthy attachment to a pet.
right. There was a real strange smell, but I was like, I love this girl. So, yeah, and that was bizarre.
Yeah.
Like it was extremely bizarre at first because the resemblance was so uncanny, and then I think I might have started like projecting that same feeling that I had for the previous girl on her
Onto her.
because they were so similar, and in that respect, it's probably the absolute worst thing I could have done. Was getting my heart broken and then turning around and being with someone who looked so much
Just
like
like
that
her.
person, because it was sort of like breaking up with that same girl a second time around when that relationship quit.
I imagine that third girl was even worse.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And when I finally let her go, and she ran to the police, it was like I'm in a cycle. I'm stuck in a definite rut here. I need to change into something different.
It's one of the first steps.
It is one of the first steps.
Admitting.
Yeah. Yeah. My therapist was also like, you got a real problem. And I mean the abduction thing.
And to which you replied, but Dr. Dahmer, I don't think I do. And
Right. And I just looked at the therapist and went, God, I love you. And then things went very, very south at that point.
so but see, now that's that bilocation thing where I don't know. There's something to what you said, there's only so many different makeups of DNA, and you
Yeah.
see these pictures of, look at this guy from the Civil War and look at this guy, and it's, the pictures are uncanny. Like it could be the same person.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's different when it's on a similar timeline, when it's, in that say 12-month timeline. I don't think that's, I don't know that could be considered that DNA thing. I think that's more of that, possible bilocation.
This is something that I've always found interesting too, and I would like at some point to devote like an entire show to it. But it seems like we keep coming back to things that were sort of said or things talked about or witnessed during the Victorian era. The Victorian era seemed to have like greater feats of magic.
Right.
We hear about a lot of like levitations, even getting out of the Victorian era and into like the teens and the 20s, when we started hearing more about like the Order of the Golden Dawn, for example. We started to hear about Levi and Crowley and Mathers and those guys. I mean, there are accounts of people literally levitating at parties, and like multiple accounts.
And but I see, I think some of that goes back to being in the paranormal field. I research a lot of that kind of stuff. And it goes back to those photos of ectoplasm and, early Kodak photos from like that 1870s on period, where they're capturing these parties where there's, people spewing ectoplasm and
Right.
all these other weird things. And it's so strange to me that people believed that.
Well, the question is do you think it was all just chicanery? Do you think it was all
absolutely.
just hoax?
Absolutely. Because when you consider the advances in photographic theory and photographic equipment,
Hmm.
if a camera that had a shutter time of 10 seconds to be able to capture a still photo, you would think that a modern camera would that be able to capture it. And to this
Right.
day, they have not been able to reproduce any of those kind of photos. And again, if the shutter time was so long in those photos, and you see that ectoplasm, wouldn't that just be a terrible blur?
You would think so.
Right.
Yeah, just part of the process, just a flaw in the process of uh,
Right.
producing the film.
But
So
here is something that I have heard of, and again, I can't speak to its legitimacy, but I can speak to stories centering around certain kinds of cameras capturing certain kinds of activity. Um,
that I have heard too. That it was the cameras were designed specifically to capture said anomaly.
like a lot of people who have had supposed Q&A sessions with entities through Kodak instant cameras. A lot of people have talked about Kodak instant cameras being able to capture things.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it's this idea where, I mean, because the film itself is an emulsifying film. It's sort of the whole camera is really like a miniature dark room. It sort of does that whole process,
All inside.
inside
Yeah.
this box, and it's still doing the process obviously when it comes out. I mean, again, I can't speak to the supernatural angle of why it would, take place on that particular kind of camera, but obviously there have been people who have spoken to the idea about certain phenomena being captured on certain kinds of equipment.
I
So
wonder
that
if
brings me
it's.
to a question. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wonder if it's like how the lens is ground or how the optics are assembled.
Well, I've got well, go ahead, Mr. Moniker, and after Mr. Moniker asks this question, I've got a question.
So my question would be though, so when it comes back to remote viewing, is this a supernatural thing that's occurring with remote viewing, or is it just a science that we haven't figured out yet?
Well, I think that's a good question. Is it supernatural or preternatural?
Right.
I don't know. And that's what fascinates me about it is you have these people that are documented,
Yeah.
completely able to do it. And
Yeah, I watched a
again,
whole documentary about a guy that it was a documentary, it was an entire experiment. And basically they sent a lady out. I don't even remember where it was, but they sent her out and she just walked around for an hour. And he
Mm.
sat there and he drew everything that he could draw. 'Em. Then they came back to the place and she could point out the different things of places that she was during that hour.
yeah, it was in like Santa Fe, New Mexico, or something like that, right?
Something like that. Yeah, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I've
sounds
seen
right.
that. And the guy was like literally drawing like he like drew ice cream shop, peppermint, and then he
Yeah.
like drew like the
Yeah.
counter and
I
the,
believe that was part of a recent Netflix documentary series,
Oh, it could have been.
actually,
I
because
don't
I think
remember
this
where I
was in the
saw it.
last past 5 years.
Right.
but see that's the stuff that gets me like where we threw I mean as the United States government we threw all kinds of money at this kind of
Oh
program
yeah.
to
Mhm.
be able to say this is where Osama is, or this is where Putin is, or whatever. I don't know. It's a great question. Supernatural, preternatural. It's a great question.
So I'm going to ask one question as a bit of a follow up, and then we'll wrap it up as we're at the top of the hour now, actually a little bit past it. Um, is this ability, and again, we're sort of led to believe from what I've read and what I've listened to in other podcasts and in Q&As is that this is not just an inherent ability. This is a learned skill. This is something that sort of separates remote viewing, I think, from a lot of what we would call psychic phenomena, is that almost everyone associated with remote viewing is adamant that this is not just a born with attribute or quality. This
Yeah,
is a learned skill.
They had to
There,
practice
absolutely.
it.
right, there are instructions where any person can do it to a varying degree of success. And that interests me greatly because Now we start looking at having almost the quality of, and I'm going to use a really broad term here, magic. Because when people used to talk about magic, ritualistic magic, ceremonial magic, it was never something you were born with per se. There were people who are more adept at it, but it was always a learned skill set. So I'm going to ask both of you one final question before we go. Do you believe that there is an individual out there, or there have been individuals who are the classic definition of sorcerers? People who have found an old tome in a dusty old library somewhere, or there was an ancient tradition that was passed down. We hear a lot about the tradition of the scribes and magicians of ancient Egypt. Do you believe that there's even the thinnest possibility that there's a person out there who has been handed knowledge where they can perform feats of actual magic?
Yes.
I'm going to go
100%.
with no. I think it's purely science, alchemy.
I think that
But do you think that alchemy is magic? That we're
alchemy
just
is
using a different term for it?
yes, it is a learned, and that's where alchemy is magic. Alchemy is, I mean, today we look at alchemy differently, but if you look at, you know, the roots of alchemy, those were magicians. Those were people that, you know, were putting things together and manufacturing. And, you know, look at you know, like look at Da Vinci and the amazing things that Da Vinci, you know, was able to do, was able to put together and make and create when, you know, other people were just barely floundering along. And I think that's where I look at it. I believe it's in the cultures of like Japan, China, Korea. You look at the things that they're able to do with the learned abilities. You know, they read a book, and in this book it teaches them how to fold steel 200 times.
Mm-hmm.
That is not something that, you know, the brain just says, oh, let's just do this 200 times. No, this is a learned trait. And to be able to do it to the ability that, you know, people like, you know, like, God, is the name's escaping me. There was a famous maker of swords in Japan that Masamune. People are still seeking this guy's swords 600 and 700 years after he's died.
Yeah.
Because of his ability to do something that no one else was able to do. That's magic, man. That is, look at the technological advances that have come along, and no one has been able to duplicate what this guy was able to do 700 years ago with nothing but fire, metal, and a hammer.
Right.
And what's interesting is that, you know, this was also information that was even more mainstream methods of sword making were passed mainly through oratory tradition. And a lot of it was because they couldn't have commoners having high tensile strength swords.
Right.
Like they had to have, again, it's a weird supply and demand thing. And now, you know, of course, we're just looking at a money issue, but all of this information had to be only sort of available for people who catered to the aristocracy. Like it wasn't something that couldn't be done by common people, but they wanted to make sure the information did not get out there. And
But
a lot
again,
of times,
I mean, look at Masamune, okay? I wish I could remember exactly how long ago it was. I can't remember if it's 600, 500, whatever it was, but let's just say 600 years ago. Okay. Think of all the people that have made swords since, that have had that as a model.
And that's a good point.
And no one has been able to recreate that model. That is a magician. That is, like you said, that's where that learned skill becomes magic.
Magic.
It
Especially
becomes
because
more.
when we're talking about information just being made to a few people, available to a few people. Now, poor blacksmiths were making swords every day the same as rich blacksmiths were. And there weren't even really rich blacksmiths. It was usually one guy. It was one guy that people would go to that they could afford, and that was usually royalty. So, but, it would stand to reason that a guy who had seen those swords, a guy who makes swords, he has knowledge. He has knowledge of how to make the object. It would stand to reason that he's made so many of them so many times that something would sort of, click.
He'd
And he
fuck up
would
and
go,
make one.
right,
He would, like,
right. Yeah, even by mistake.
Hmm.
And they weren't doing that. They were not making anything better by mistake. They weren't making it on purpose. They were making it all. They were making the same shitty swords time and time and time and time again. And those swords that were, very expensive, that were made for kings and people, rich landowners, they could always tell those guys on the battlefield, because it wasn't that they were better swordsmen. It was that other swords would break when they tried to hack at them. So these swords were of such high grade that if you were to try to hack at the sword, your sword would break. It was as if the other sword sliced through your sword. And a lot of good, poor swordsmen died because, quite frankly, they just didn't have the superior weapon.
Hmm.
But
from our chat room, Justin says, definitely learned, practice, focus, skill. The same could be said about sensitives and psychics. The sheer practice of envisioning to improve one's life is proof of capabilities far greater.
Which is why I go the route of science, I think.
But see, I agree and disagree because of
Right.
exactly what Ash was saying. Because if you don't think that there was another sword maker that was going, fucking Masamune, that motherfucker. I mean, I've been making swords for this fucking guy for 20 years, and now all of a sudden this Masamune asshole shows up and his swords are 100 times better than mine. I'm gonna bust my ass. I've been doing it longer than him. But no one ever created that. No
Right.
one was ever able to duplicate what one person did.
And it's a good argument for it too.
And
Yeah.
and
I definitely agree there.
you can go historically down the line. You can look at look at painting. Oh, no one ever did what Monet did. No, that's bullshit, because Manet did the same thing as Monet did, and arguably as good. There's something to. I mean, there's something to it when it's not just brush to canvas. This was something that was making the metal different, and they were all getting the metal from the same place. It was all coming from the same ore. They were all using the same wood to make the fires. They were using the same kind of hammers, the same kind of anvils, the same kind of everything.
Yeah.
Just something was different. And what was it? What was different?
Well, that's the same, and this is sort of expanding on the idea of, why does one person have the recipe and nobody else does? And this is even biblical, but I don't know if anyone's actually read about the Ark of the Covenant and how it was allegedly made. Okay, so it wasn't just this idea where supposedly, the Metatron or whatever, or God himself said, get a box and put some shit in it. these instructions were apparently very specific
Right.
about what materials the box was made out of, the exact length of the box,
How many
the
cubits?
holes, how many
Mhm.
cubits. It leads you to believe someone had these instructions. You know, depending on how you interpret things biblically, the instructions either came from God or they came from a source.
Right.
So the source had instructions, you know, and whether it was one of these Egyptian magicians or what, had instructions to build a box that functioned very similar to what Tesla called the death ray. This was like a mobile death ray.
Mhm.
You know, this thing could allegedly, you know, mow down armies if you had it. And they were also very specific that there were certain kinds of burns you would get when you open the box. Like this isn't just Wrath of God stuff. This is very specific blisters, burns, and sickness upon not only opening the box, but people who carried it.
Right.
Like being anywhere near the ark was bad news.
And I think if I remember reading correctly, and I want to say, Justin, thank you very much for popping in there. It's a great point, and I do believe that it's kind of right, but I do think that there's a little bit of a difference in some of it. But going back to the Ark, the Covenant, I remember reading, and I can't remember who it was that found them, but they found these batteries buried in an Egyptian tomb, and the battery was like lemon juice and something else that they put in this clay jar and had a copper rod in it, and that supposedly that was what caused some of the burns or whatever it was that came out of the Ark of the Covenant was these clay pot batteries.
Yeah.
Again, what else were they doing with batteries? What the light bulb? No. I mean,
and maybe that should be the focus of the next show, is out of place artifacts.
okay. So 2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks from tonight.
Artifacts.
Out of place artifacts.
Out of place artifacts, things that exist and shouldn't.
Aliens.
Justin says aliens.
And we're just going to leave that up.
I like it.
As we exit
Justin.
the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Everyone had themselves a great night. Thanks everyone who stopped by. My apologies to everyone who stopped by and just couldn't hack it. Maybe in a couple weeks, you'll be able to go the full mile. We'll be talking about out of place artifacts in 2 weeks on Night Terrors Radio. Thanks so much, everybody. Have yourself a great night.